All right, good evening. It is several minutes after 7 o'clock, and this is the regular meeting of the Richfield Board of Education. In attendance this evening are Todd Nolenberger, Christine Malik, John Ashmead, Superintendent Steve Yanowski, Deb Etchen, student representatives Jordy Chavez, Catherine Zolmer, and Shay, it's with an M? Walters. Munoz is, that's right, I was getting there. Thank you very much, Shay. Mr. Paulus is unable to attend this evening. He had let us know earlier about that conflict that he has. So we will look for a motion on the agenda, if any member is so prepared.
I'll move the agenda. Second.
So a motion by Malik, second by Etchen, that we approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. So we can go ahead and move on to item 3B, which is reports and information from school sources. We begin with the superintendent update.
All right, so beginning my update begins with a conversation around the referendum and school board election, which are on the ballot on November 3rd, which is actually just 2 weeks and 1 day from today. If you recall, as I've talked about my superintendent goals, one of my goals is to participate in effective communication surrounding the referendum. Just reiterating that our role as a school district is to share information. We do not advocate for any position, but our role is to share information. So I was at the Centennial PTO actually just about a half an hour ago, reminding our citizens about the school board referendum on the ballot, talking about $933 per student, which is a significant portion of our $1,380 per student that is gifted to us or shared with us by the property tax owners of the city of Richfield, something of which we are very grateful and take very seriously, strong stewardship of our citizens. We also presented and shared information with the mayor and the city council last week, and followed by a citizen who created a recommendation. We received a unanimous vote of support from both the city council and the mayor, creating a resolution in support of the referendum. So I wanted to report that back to our school board. Additionally, we'll have presentations to share information in this coming week and a half with STEM, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, the Latino Family Association, and also at multiple apartments and locations around the city, as our goal is to share information in the most effective way possible. And then just a reminder, this is our final board meeting before the election. And we will continue to fill that role of sharing information with our constituents. There is a group that is participating in advocating. I'd like to introduce Tina Lavin, who is the chair of the CQC, or the Citizens for Equality Community, and they are working in collaboration with the district, carrying the CQC portion of the conversation. So Tina asked for a few moments to share some conversation this evening. Tina.
Thank you. Well, the Richfield CQC has been very active this season, and we've been able to pass out over 500 flyers at various community events such as Penn Fest, Homecoming, and the Farmers Market. We have over 100 yard signs that are up throughout our community, and we've received 104 endorsements from leaders and citizens in the community that support the passage of both referendum questions. Those endorsements are going to be published in the October 29th Sun Current. We're taking out an ad. Some of the leaders of our communities are the Richfield City Council and all of its members, school board candidates, Senate District 63 DFL, and the chair, Eric Ferguson, State House Representatives Linda Solcombe and Jean Wagness, State Senators Melissa Wicklund and Patricia Torres-Ray. We also have 2 upcoming events to get the vote out. Our first is hosting a phone bank on Saturday, October 24th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're going to have donated cell phones, a script, and we're providing a lunch to our volunteers. Our goal is to get about 2,000 calls made out to the registered voters. For more details and to RSVP, please go to richfieldcqc.com. The second event is our citywide lit drop, and that's where we're going to deliver a flyer to each home in Richfield. So all anybody has to do is come to Richfield High School on the morning of October 31st from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. to pick up a route of your own choosing. You deliver a flyer to each house on that route. It takes a little less than an hour to complete one route. More information on that event can be found on the website or on our Facebook page. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Lavin?
Where can we vote?
Oh, that's a really good question. So you can go to the City of Richfield or the State of Minnesota website, and you can find where your precinct is. Either the city webpage or the state should have that.
It's also important to note that as a district, part of our responsibility in sharing information is to mail out polling locations to all of the residential addresses and property owners in Richfield. So you should have received or be receiving in your mail the location of all the precinct locations for voting, in addition to a sample ballot, which outlines the 9 school board candidates on the ballot, our question number 1 to renew, and our question number 2, a small inflationary increase that would cost up to approximately $3.40 per year per home, or just under 30 cents per month per citizen living in Richfield.
And just for clarification, if you Google "where do I vote Minnesota," that page will pop right up. You can put in your address. One other thing, Tina, I believe it's richfieldcqc.org rather than .com.
It's .com.
I tried .com and it didn't come up. I tried .org and it went right to.
It did?
Right to your
okay,
phone
because
page.
mine was .com.
Okay, so people could try
Okay,
both.
well,
Yeah,
People can try both.
right.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
yeah. So thank you very much, Tina. So Superintendent Yanowski, the October 1st student count, I believe, is the second item.
All right, so Craig Holge will be sharing information in regard to our enrollment count. Just as a reminder of the conversation we had just at our previous board meeting, we are down 91 students from our projection. Looking at kindergarten with a slightly reduced birth rate, also the increase in competition in regard to our transition grades in middle school, and also a reduction of the choice is yours. And I also want to bring to attention, before I turn things over to Mr. Holge, that within our community there's been a purchase of the Crossroads at Penn apartment complex, which long-term will be impacting approximately 142 of our current students. The complex was purchased by an organization who's going to be managed by Soderberg Management Company. We've been working in direct partnership with both the City of Richfield and Soderberg to try to maintain our school district vision and mission, which is we have the ultimate goal of trying to maintain school-based stability for our students, which obviously when an apartment building is purchased, it can create some significant transitions in our students' lives. So in connection with the city, we've been collaborating with Soderberg to try to create a scenario to maintain our students through the course of the school year. We're still finalizing the details, but Soderberg has worked very hard with us and with the city to try to meet that end goal. And we believe we've come to an understanding where citizens who are on month-to-month leases, well, they will have a slight increase in their rent. We believe they'll be able to maintain their residence through May. And then those on longer-term leases will either maintain their lease until it is over, or be having the opportunity to be extended through May on that slight increase. So we've really worked hard, and we found really strong collaborative partners with both Soderberg and the city to try to maintain that strong stability for our 142 students. Craig.
Yes, thank you. As I think the whole board knows, we've been actively reviewing our student enrollment. Kathy Rumpy, who's our MARS coordinator, student information coordinator here in the district, has been monitoring this along with Lynn Opatz and our staff here, as well as each one of the building principals and their clerical staff. Knowing the importance of having our students being served, getting them enrolled effectively, and you've also had a chance to preview this information in previous meetings as well. We do bring this information forward in a formal report every October based on our October 1 counts, and then this information really is used to drive our enrollment projections for next year, to look at our revenue projections for next year, and all of that budget for next year is also built off of this information as well as our current information. As we look at this, and this is a high detailed analysis of grade levels and class sizes at each one of the, or not class sizes, but student enrollment by grade level at each one of the buildings. But just to give kind of a high-level overview, we do have 4,302 students district-wide. 2,223 are in the K-5 program. 835 are in the middle school program. 1,134 are in the 9 through 12 programming. We have 96 pre-kindergarten students and 14 transition plus students, which is our students who are beyond grade 12 and being serviced over at South Education Center. As Superintendent Yanowski said, it is 91 students less than projections and 94 students less than the actual 2014-15 school year. When we take a look at that multi-year analysis, one of the things that I noted here is while we are down students from projections and enrollment from last year, we are still above our enrollment from 4 years ago and significantly more than 300 students above our enrollment from 2009. And so we are not significantly down in total enrollment compared to where we've been over the last 10 years, but certainly over last year as well. And then also looking at it, a grade level analysis, what we see here is the green line at the top is our elementary K through 5 program, and you can see that it is relatively stable over the last few years, even though we are down students slightly this year. Our middle school, which is the purple line at the bottom, is the one that's had the greatest decline over the last couple of years, and then our high school also has had a slightly less but similar decline over the last couple of years as well. So these are trends that we're continuing to look at. Working with the Director of Finance, myself, and Kathy Rumpy, will be taking a look at this information to really make sure we're driving intelligent projections. And we are also looking at moving forward into December when we have a chance to look at the Where We Are report, which is where we're at right now, but then also projecting out into the future for our student enrollment pieces to make sure that we're looking at these different categories to make sure we understand why there are those reductions from projections. As Superintendent Yanowski said, there are some assumptions that we're making or hypotheses that we'll be testing just to make sure that that's exactly the rationale behind that and analyzing those in detail so that we can make strong educated assumptions for next year as well. That is the highlight of the report here, and as I indicated, there are a lot of questions that we're still looking at responding to as we get information about where our students are coming from, where students who have left have gone, and those are all things that we'll have a chance to review back in December.
Are there questions for Mr. Holge regarding the preliminary enrollment? So Craig, can you flash back to that last slide, please? What I would be personally, an analysis that I would be interested in learning about is so can you point out for me again the middle school and high school curves?
So the middle school is the purple line down here at the bottom, and the high school is this light blue line that's
and those are total values, right? So those are totals of students enrolled at those grade level categories?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what I would be interested in learning as far as an analysis would be, because we're going back to 05 on this slide, we've got 10 years of data. So essentially, if there was a kindergartner who entered in 05, they would be in the high school now as a 10th grader from this particular curve. But I guess that what I would like to understand is a cohort, sort of a cohort survival analysis. If we can have an understanding of children who are entering our district in the K-5 grades and what's happening to those cohorts of kids as they, as they age through, and where we're seeing enrollment shifts, as we sort of see children kind of moving through the system. Does that make sense for the question that I'm asking?
Yep. And I believe we've taken a look at that. I'm not sure what span of years that we've looked at specifically.
Yeah.
But basically, what is that retention factor for a student who enrolls in the district?
Right.
I know that when we did the analysis around the all-day kindergarten, we saw a high level of retention in that area, probably greater than what we had had previously, or at least as much as it was previously prior to offering that kindergarten, all-day kindergarten following the 2005 referendum, I think it was.
Right, right.
But
So
we can
we're
take
just
a look at
getting a
that.
little dated, I think.
Yep.
Some of that analysis may be
No,
getting.
absolutely, but we can take a look
little
and
dated
see
at this
what
point, so,
information we
yeah.
have available and put
Yeah.
that together in a few different ways.
Yep.
And then what I think I also heard you say is look at where those primary entry points are or exit points are.
Yep.
if there are some trends in what that would look like.
I think that would be helpful information.
Okay.
And then we could potentially think about having that as part of our December enrollment report. Yeah. Other thoughts from board members as far as analyzing the, and we've had some conversation at our last meeting about the implications for our projection methodology. So, I mean, we can think about that, I guess, in December when we do look at those projections.
Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, one of the things that we're looking at is, as Superintendent Yanowski said last meeting, we saw a dip in the birth rate, both in the city, in the zip code, and in Hennepin County in 2009. And so we saw that sit for probably 3 years, I believe it was. And so we're monitoring that piece specifically for our kindergarten, which tends to be our
Yes.
greatest risk factor
Yes.
and kind of the best flip of a coin where we kind of make some assumptions based on that
Yes.
that we didn't necessarily account for coming into this year, because I believe we assumed a fairly similar enrollment in kindergarten compared to last year when those projections were done.
Yeah.
And then just the market conditions that we always have to be flexible and fluid on and plan so that we can mitigate those as they come up after December when we're making our assumptions and starting that budgeting process. And so there is kind of a 9-month lag period before we actually see those kids coming into the school from when we're making those projections. And just being fluid around that piece, I think, is one of the things that I want to be able to do so that we constantly monitor that and measure those market conditions too.
Right. And I think if you can skip back one more slide, I think that would be another analysis that might be interesting, because my belief is that if we were to overlay a curve of Hennepin County or 55423 birth rate, we would see a fairly good match in terms of that curve with the kind of rise and fall that we're seeing here. That it's basically that we're reflecting 5 years out from the birth rate trends, is my hypothesis. Now that's going to be obviously give or take a couple tenths of a percentage point. And that's always the question that we come up with when we do our projection, is do we you know, which way do we slice and dice that number? And that's where the judgment comes into play.
Do we do a 4-year, a 5-year, an
Right.
8-year, Hennepin County
Yep.
zip code, a
That's
blended
right.
of the two, and
Yep.
you know, and the other thing that our projection model allows us to do is kind of blend all of those options, which probably gives us the most consistent piece. But
Right.
we look at trends within the district. What are the things that we know that are, you know, as Superintendent Yanowski said, either changes within the community that cause us to adjust what those projections are based on those changes within the community, and those are just things we have to constantly.
Those are the things that will then push you to either
Make
over or
adjustments.
undershoot, kind of
Yep.
depending on how you predict that. So, because we know we're always going to be off by a factor of some tenths of a percentage point, but when you've got 4,000 students, that can be 40 students pretty quick. So, all right. Any other observations or requests as we analyze these trends and think about our projections for next year?
Craig, have you, I don't know how deep you've gotten into your analysis of the figures. Can you tell us how many former Richfield students were lost to the 2 middle school charters?
I don't have those numbers right now. We have, there were, I don't want to cite a number. It was, I believe, more than 10 and less than 20
Okay.
at that middle school level, but I can't quote exactly from the ones that we saw record requests from earlier this year. So it wasn't a significant number, but it was enough to make an adjustment at the middle school that is worth noting
Yeah.
and being aware of.
I thought it might even be more than that, but that's good to know.
Yeah, best guess right now. But those are things that we're going to be looking at specifically, where those record requests are. The other thing is we find out enrollment of Richfield students in others. As you know, that you get the report of where our Richfield resident students enrolled. That's one of the things we'll be able to take a look at too, and see if that's adjusted differently.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So you're probably staying up and giving us the staffing report next.
I am staying up, and I'm going to invite Lynn Opatz up here, who's
All
the
right.
supervisor of human resources, and we're going to tag team on this like we did last year. Lynn really puts all of these details together and manages the staffing report. And as you know, that you get a multi-page report that was in your packets that really details it all for you so you know everybody who's in every position in Richfield schools to the, I think, 5th decimal point in some cases too. So we're not going to drill into that much detail unless you have questions about it, and then we'll try to respond to it. But just to highlight, the staffing report shows that we have 614.66783 FTEs, or 681 employees in the district. 357 of those are teachers, or 371 people. 95 are paras, 67 FTEs are custodial, 22 are clerical, almost 23 are food service, just over 11 are outreach workers, security, and then we have 38 administrators and classified management employees, which are the supervisors in the district, the confidential employees, the principals, the assistant principals, as well as district office leadership.
So with our overall increase of about 7.72 FTEs, or 1 employee, the majority of the increase is in our teachers, 21.71 teacher FTEs, and then a decrease of 16.46 para FTEs. Another significant increase was food service, went up 4.72. We added a food service position at each building except RDLS, which we haven't had that, in past years. So that's just the overall building changes, or district-wide changes. Now here's the building changes. The biggest change is the increase of teachers in all the buildings, with the exception of the middle school. So all buildings had teacher increases. STEM had the largest building FTE change, with an increase overall of 7.75 FTE, and that increase included 6.5 teacher increase. And then the next largest change was at the middle school, and there was an actual decrease there of 6.26 FTE, and 4.42 of that was teachers. And the reason the middle school went down in teacher FTEs is they had a program change over there. So that was different than all the other buildings. So that's the most significant building changes. And so hiring overall, we had 159 positions posted for this school year, and that's everybody, food service, custodial, all positions. And of those, 102 of the postings were for teachers, and we hired 78 new teachers. So the other positions were changes within the district. And then we also hired 27 new paraprofessionals.
As Lynn said, there were some program changes, and I think the board is aware of all of these pieces, but really that significant increase with teachers and paras is a reconfiguration of the instructional services, looking specifically at reducing our class sizes and intentionally drilling those down, having more licensed staff doing the instructional delivery for students, especially in our support services programs, and drilling down to make sure that we have licensed staff working in those areas. One of the things to note is, we had 27 new paraprofessionals that were hired. So even though there was that reduction of positions, we worked hard to retain as many paraprofessionals as possible who were otherwise laid off because of those reductions, and we were successful of those individuals who were applying for positions and really kind of drilling them in, with the exception of about a handful of individuals who, based on the qualifications of the positions that were available, where we also changed to some school-wide title programs, which have a higher level of educational requirement for positions that require 2 years of higher ed or passing the paraprofessional test. That was another component of some of those changes, that we weren't successful at retaining individuals, or individuals simply did not reapply for positions. So that was one of the things that we're looking at. And then also more consistent programming and delivery across the district in our instructional services. So having similar programming for class sizes, variations in that when they're designed and needed based on the free and reduced lunch count, student services needed at those programs, but having consistent staffing for our gifted talented positions, for instructional coaches, for literacy interventionists, for math interventionists, so that all students are getting the services that they need and have the opportunity to excel. We also had a reorganization of the operations department that isn't necessarily highlighted here, but had basically 3 administrative positions that became 3 different administrative positions that were done at a net flat change to the budget. but looking at some changes that way as far as the titles of positions and the responsibilities that individuals had. And then also, as Lynn mentioned, the increase within nutrition services, which, as I think the board has heard, the delivery of meals, the increase in participation in the nutrition services, and really the responsiveness to our student enrollment and their needs and demands resulted in that staffing that ends up coming out of that nutrition services budget. So a lot of exciting things that are happening, a lot of change, but change that is very intentionally designed around that and set up that way. So with that, I would respond to any questions that the board has regarding the staffing report, the detailed analysis and the detailed FTEs within each one of those positions. We'll look it up quickly in the report and see if we can respond to your questions.
So do we really only have one school nurse at the middle school and no school nurses anywhere else?
So our health services staff is set up this way. So we have a licensed school nurse at the high school. So that person is considered a teacher and is both a licensed school nurse and a teaching position, and so that is why that's a separate category. Our middle school has a registered nurse position, which is in our miscellaneous pay rates, and then each one of our elementary schools has health paraprofessionals or health assistants that sit within the paraprofessional category. So they're trained to do the service delivery that they need. They're overseen by the licensed school nurse at the high school. But we have health services in each one of the programs. We just have the registered nurse at the middle school, which is the one that you're referencing, and then a licensed school nurse at the high school. So rest assured, kids are taken care of at each one of the buildings.
Who does the record keeping at the elementaries for health services? I mean, the shots and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, so that's managed, I believe, primarily by the health paraprofessionals, as well as within the student information system. So, and the secretaries at each one of the buildings. So the secretaries really do their own initial enrollment of students at each one of the building levels.
And a portion of the nurse at the high school is to travel to the other buildings and help supervise and partner with the nursing services provided at other locations.
Yeah. So there's, as far as information and record keeping, they're well supported by a TIE system that makes it easy to do a good job of keeping track of that kind of technical health-related information. So I think that's where you can use a para in this role safely. Jordy, yes, sir.
Do you have a number recorded of how many of those employed teachers are bilingual?
Yep.
It's not part of this report, but we do have to report that, and so we do have that information.
Okay.
Yep.
Making sure.
Yep, and one of the things with changes in our teacher contract, we now have an incentive or stipend that's available for teachers who are bilingually fluent. And so primarily the teachers at Richfield Dual Language School, but one of the things that will help us gather more accurate information in this bilingual component is if teachers believe that they're bilingual, we're working through a process of doing an assessment on them as far as the level of fluency that they have, so that will better guide that information in response to that question too.
Good question.
I have a question.
Yes, Catherine.
What was the average class size prior to the program changes versus now?
It depends on the grade level. We had some targeted that were set up by the district. It was brought down, I want to say by 3 or 4 students per classroom.
2 per classroom.
2 per classroom?
Across the entire district. And that's not related to the enrollment situation.
Yep.
So we were able to bring them down by 2. And I believe we went from 27, give or take, down to 25 and 23. Averages, of course.
Right. Yeah, and those numbers, as we have this conversation commonly, those numbers are sometimes hard to, when you're living the experience in your classroom that's not 23 or 25. You have to remember these are averages, and so each kid's experience may not reflect exactly that average, but yeah, across the board.
And at the high school, they would be higher.
Correct.
Yeah.
Typically, they're lower at the elementary schools.
Yeah. Other questions for Mr. Holge or Ms. Opitz? Thank you both very much for a detailed analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no accommodations to report this evening, so we can go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. If any board member is prepared to make a motion, we can entertain that.
I move we approve the board agenda.
Is there a
Consent
second?
agenda, excuse me.
Yes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So motion by Ashmead, second by Malik, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on this item? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, the motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. So the next item, we do not have any old business for this evening, so we can move on to item 6.1, which is the technology infrastructure project.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I bring to you another wonderful change order, but this change order is actually kind of nice because it is coming in the form of a credit. As we're tying things up with Parco's Construction, who did all the architectural work of building the closets last spring, we had one final change order to push through before we sign all the finalizing paperwork. And so this change order with Parco's Construction is for a deduct on the original contracted amount of $854 due to us returning some temperature controller devices that we are not purchasing with them. They were in the original bid because we're going with some Honeywell sensors that we approved earlier in this process going into these closets to monitor the climate control. So tonight I am asking for approval on this change order.
Are there questions for Mr. Paternos? It's hard to, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, I guess is the old expression, right? If there are no questions, we can certainly entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion by Nolenberger, second by Ashmead. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. The motion carries.
Thank you.
So thank you. The next item is regarding our errors and omissions insurance policy renewal, which also has, I believe, some nice fiscal implications.
Correct, although relatively small, but being that there's no increase, that's a positive thing. So the school leaders' errors and omissions insurance policy is what protects you as board members, specifically for errors and omissions in employment practice, as well as employment practices, and protects me and Lynn and the rest of our team as well. This is a renewal that comes with a premium set at $18,000, which is $626 less than the 14-15 year. Similar coverage with $3 million liability limit set, and that is each occurrence as well as total for the year. There were some other small changes to the plan that really helped us in that Western Insurance is now an admitted insurance plan in Minnesota, which means that we don't pay fees, and there's fees associated with them coming in and practicing, but their programs are approved by the Department of Commerce. It's also protected by the Department of Commerce as well. So some positive changes there with a request to renew that policy with Western World Insurance.
Are there any questions for
That's
Mr.
different
Holge?
insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Questions for Mr. Holge around this particular policy and the renewal of this policy? Our insurance guy is not here to do that. That's right, yeah. If there are no questions and anyone is so moved, we may entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move that we approve the school leaders' errors and omissions insurance policy as presented.
I'll second that.
So a motion by Malik and second by Ashmead that we approve this policy renewal as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. The motion carries.
Thank you.
So item 3 under new business is donations. Mr. Nowski?
Yes, recommending that the Board of Education accept the following donations from Mr. Richard Rumpy, donated photography equipment to Richfield High School and the photography program with the opportunity to enhance the learning for students with advanced photography equipment. Richard Rumpy. The Kopp Family Foundation, who donated $3,000 to the Richfield High School Random Acts of Kindness account for student needs, and that from the Kopp Family Foundation. Finally, the Optimist Club of Richfield, donating $125 to the Richfield School Octagon Club for their homecoming parade float. So thanks to the Optimist Club of Richfield.
It is my recollection, am I correct in thinking that the Kopp Family Foundation has been donating a few things of late? I feel like I've been hearing that name.
I believe the Kopp Family Foundation has been very wonderful to Richfield Public
Yes,
Schools.
yes. So that does not go unnoticed. So very generous donations from a number of generous individuals and groups. I would look for a motion from a board member that we accept these donations with gratitude.
So moved.
Second?
So a motion by Nolenberger, second by Malik, that we accept the donations with gratitude. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. So thank you very much to the generous donors. Item 7 is advanced planning. I will open the floor to board members for any information or questions that they choose to raise.
I had a random conversation with a Richfield citizen who said something about their neighbor withdrew their child from Richfield schools or failed to enroll them this year because Richfield schools were rated so poorly in some study, he didn't know what it was. You know anything about this? We got a 3 out of a 10 in terms of the quality of the education a child will receive here in Richfield.
So as part of our strategic planning process, one of the things we were looking towards in terms of communications and marketing is there are housing websites that score school districts based on essentially a recommendation of 1 person or 0 people or 1,000 people. And so there are certain housing websites that may have us ranked very highly, and there are other housing websites that might not have us ranked so well. And so as one of our communications and marketing, we talked a little bit about some of the efforts we're going to be doing last month. As we looked at our enrollment, we actually already have Principal Zambrino out working with our 4th and 5th grades to do some communication and marketing to them. We're also going to be working with our realtors and also with some of our current students and their families to be registering their perspectives on Richfield High School, Richfield Middle School, and our 4 elementary schools on the housing websites to alter some of that data perhaps, because were I to go on to a particular housing website and score a school that had not been scored, my score would be taken for the score out of 10. And so that certainly is explainable and understandable, but something for us to definitely pay attention to in the larger picture. And definitely not a reflection of the education that we are producing for our students in Richfield Public Schools.
I would concur with that, but it was just kind of alarming that somebody went on some website and got a 3, and I'm not enrolling my kids there because of that.
Well,
No further
I was gonna
investigation.
say,
They've
which
just been
portion
sent
alarms you?
for their-
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so
Well, I guess that's
I try not to, and I
It
try not to
is.
react to any internet polls.
Well, and I will also say I have received specific emails from, and I will leave those housing websites unnamed, but asking us to advertise to increase our ranking with a particular housing website.
Oh, lovely.
yeah.
nice.
And so there are ways for which those could be altered that may or may not connect to what the actual education
To our
is
ethical
occurring.
and our ethical sense of right and wrong, perhaps. So it's obviously a fact in the current age that there's all kinds of information available of good and bad quality in terms of how scientific or reliable or sort of valuable the
Useful,
information
yes,
is. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a lot of other inaccuracies also. If you look on some of those sites, if you look for a house and then you click on the school district, there are things like they still have Richfield Intermediate School listed. They don't have RDLS or RSTEM, or it's completely outdated on
Yeah.
a number of those.
So it seems to me that the onus on us would be to also take, and I know you're thinking about this, Superintendent, to take charge of the messaging and to get our own voice heard in terms of putting out a message that is accurate and fairly representative of
For
what's going
example,
on.
just out of human curiosity, I called up a particular housing website at the moment, Currently, we have 0 reviews for several of our schools. Richfield High School received 4 out of 5 stars on 10 reviews. Another of our schools has 0 reviews, and so it receives 0 stars. And so as we think about rankings, you can see how in one school 10 people became a 4-star school, another school 0 people is a 0-star school, and just things for us to think about in the larger work with our community.
So other information or questions?
I wanted to commend Craig. I'm doing a couple different committees with him, health and safety and FPAC, and he's taken them over from Michael, who had done them forever, and came up with a new health and safety and wellness, which I think is appropriate, and I thought was a great change. And the FPAC, the way the meeting moved and the way the dialogue worked, I thought he did a great job running them both and open to new thoughts and new ways of doing things, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. Very good. So future meeting dates. First of all, a reminder to all of our citizens that the election is the first Tuesday in November. That is November 3rd. We will have school board candidates on the ballot, as well as 2 referendum questions. The first board meeting in November is Monday the 9th. We will be holding our election canvassing at that meeting, followed by the regular board meeting here in the district boardroom. The second meeting in November is the 23rd of November. That meeting will be held here in the district boardroom and hosted by Central Education Center. Are there suggested agenda items? I see a note here.
Yes, in your agenda, you'll note that a negotiations review for a closed session for the board, and suggested at a date to be determined, be that November 9th or November 23rd, as we take a look at the process in terms of working out our teacher contract. If we recall, in an extremely collaborative partnership, working very well throughout the summer, we settled our teacher contract prior to the start of the school year. We're very proud of the efforts of both negotiations team and the work of district leadership and Education Richfield leadership in advancing the trust, the strong relationship in that partnership, and wanting to review that process with the board to help utilize that as groundwork for planning for the future. And so a negotiations review is suggested as a closed meeting.
Does anyone have any particular preferences about either of those dates in November?
I will not be available the 23rd, so if anybody would like my thoughts or input, the 9th would be better. I'll leave that up to you.
Yes.
Well, I know I want Mr. Nolenberger's input, so I'm hoping for the 9th.
Yeah.
Good.
I would agree with the 9th.
I would, yeah. I'll have to echo that opinion from Mr. Janowski. So without Tim's, we don't know Tim's schedule necessarily, but I'm thinking that we would go ahead and shoot for the 9th to go ahead and schedule that as a closed session. So that would be held following the regular meeting. Other items?
Did you say following the regular meeting?
Following the regular meeting on the 9th, yes.
Okay, very good.
So other items to be thinking about for our agenda in the coming month? If not, I would look for a motion on adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion by Nolenberger, second by Ashmead, that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.